or visit heartdrop.com or see us on amazon.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Stumbling down the road with Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff as she carries stones, digs holes, and wheels her shovels on her way. This road is the real path. It is never easy and never clear, but always entertaining. This journey has not been a seated event, as Bridgette walks, runs, stumbles, carries, digs, drags, laughs, fights, sings, prays, dances, kicks, screams, and oftentimes falls.
Hey everybody, I'm hoping that I am past the promos and, hey Jonathan?
Yes.
All right, hold on one second while I do the intro and we will bring you on. All right, hey, so everybody out there in Revolution Radio Land, this is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. I'm with you for the next 2 hours on my radio show, Carrying Stones and Digging Holes on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. That is our website. You can go to our website and you can click the funding page. Everything that we do, our listeners get from all the hosts and our whole network, we do for free. We volunteer that. So the least you could do is click on the funding and find out amazing ways that you can actually fund our network. We have heirloom seed packages. We even have advertising, and I do have a healthcare by Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff banner on our website that I, help to help myself by getting business, but also for the sideline work that I do. And then also help to support my network. So yeah, go to the funding link, find out all kinds of different ways that you can fund our network and keep our radio going. We try to bring you informative people and interesting topics. I think you can also find us on the TuneIn app these days. I'm not sure how that works, but you can go there and actually get us on your iPhone if you like. While you're running around town, you can listen to us. Also, if you go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you click on schedule, then you have a choice of A or B. Click on A because my show is in Schedule A. Scroll down to the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You'll see a picture of a bee with pollen flying towards a flower. Click on that, and then you can get bio information about me, about the show, and contact information if you want to contact me for any reason. Anyway, so today I have a guest, Jonathan Button, and he has been a friend of mine since about 2006. And I was trying to think, I have a lot of friends where, we crisscross, like the United States, and we meet up at different points and hang out. And so I was just thinking, so 2006 kind of, I went through a Kundalini yoga phase. I think it was the first time I lived in San Diego. I know I lived in San Diego twice for short period stints, maybe 6 months each, for different reasons. The second time I went down there was mostly just for alpha biotics, which is also something I do, which is amazing thing that helps your brain and your body to heal. Can arrest disease, but that's a whole other story. And so 2006, I was down in San Diego. It was kind of like, grooving on some Kundalini. I was living with some people who, were teachers, studied with, Yogi Bhajan in New Mexico for like 35 years. And I was living with them. We were doing, we kind of had like a small ashram on Coronado Island. And during that time frame, I actually met Jonathan, and he had some sessions paid for him by someone, and so I started working on him, and we became really good friends. And then he is like, I call him my yoga expert, because he knows everything yoga. He's been everywhere with the yoga movement. He's probably been in the yoga movement like maybe 40 years, maybe 45 years. I'm dating him. Sorry about that, Jonathan. And I think the next time he had some major health issues, and if that he wants to talk about those when he comes on, to help people kind of see what recovery is like, with a healthy lifestyle for his particular illness that he has, or not illness, but health thing. And then I went down to New Mexico in October 2014, and I stayed for, I don't know, maybe a month, and helped him. Also was wanted to help him during that time to try to get on his feet and move forward. And he was down there teaching different types of yoga, mostly Kundalini yoga at the Yogi Bhajan Center, which I forget the name of. And at that time, I happened to be there during, I think, Yogi Bhajan's 10th year anniversary of his death, or something like that. And then also his birthday. So every night we were going to these, vegan food gatherings, and doing a whole bunch of, chanting. And it was a pretty interesting time. And then I think the last time I saw him was not this last summer, but the summer before. And I went down to a different part of San Diego and stayed with him, I think, for about a month. And, did work together and had a really good time. And then hopefully I'll be able to go down and see him again. We're hoping, we've been talking about now at the end of September. So, hey, Jonathan.
Hello.
Hello. So do you want to give people, we have 2 hours, just so you know, if you need a break, just let me know. And we have one official break on the show, the last 4 minutes of the first hour. So that way, if I cut you off during that time, because we're going into the commercial lasts 4 minutes. So do you want to kind of give people kind of a history of how you navigated your way to yoga all those years ago, and maybe talk about all that?
Oh, you want me to talk about me?
Yeah, I want you to talk about you.
Oh, wow. I thought we were talking about yoga.
Well, we're going to talk about you and yoga, and then we'll talk about yoga.
Okay. Well, my dad was a diplomat, so I lived in a lot of different countries growing up, and altogether 7 years in Israel, 2 years in Japan. It's almost 10 years in Asia, traveling and living in different parts of Asia. And in the late 60s, kind of got into transcendental meditation when I was in high school. And then in my senior year in high school, I went on a world tour. I went to India, and that's when I became aware of the culture of yoga in India, which is a good place to do it. And I lived in an ashram for a little while, and so my resume has me as a student at the Sri Aurobindo Ashram, which is located in or near, the listeners may have heard of it. It's a place called Auroville, the city of the future. It's kind of like a utopian society, utopian community in South India. And that was back in 1974, the city of the future. Now it's pretty much, they built their gold dome, and they're pretty much actively doing their utopian thing. And everything has to do with yoga, in my opinion. So yoga is not just exercises. Yoga is a whole lifestyle. And it's pretty much called Ayurveda. Ayurveda includes yoga, meditation, food, architecture, color therapy. It goes on and on. It's evidence to support that many of the spiritual disciplines in the world have their origins in India. And of course, we can get into a whole discussion about shamanism versus yoga, or shamanism as it applies to yoga, with Bridgette, I'm sure, as far as what predates what. But that's a whole nother story. And going back to my story, so yeah, then I went on to Japan, and at a very early, about 18 years old, I started at the Kundalini Yoga Ashram in New Mexico, and they had me leading sadhana and teaching a class or two here and there. So from a very early age, I started out with Kundalini Yoga. And then I got mixed up with a woman and got married and had kids and had a career in the food business. And it kind of put my yoga career on hold for a little while. But I guess the point is, I started out in 75 with food and yoga at a place called the Golden Temple Conscious Cookery, which is like a chain of vegetarian restaurants, which was actually worldwide at that time. And not so much anymore, but I've always had those two things going on, yoga and food. And I find more and more in my life that yoga is food. I mean, yoga is food. Food is yoga, and yoga is food. Food is medicine, I should say. I guess there's a book out called The Magic Pill, which explains how food is medicine. So I've always been a strong believer in that, and more I am. And then as time went by and I started to get out of the food business, people kept trying to convince me that I should teach yoga. And as I started teaching yoga in studios and gyms, I started learning there was other kinds of yoga besides Kundalini. Kundalini is sometimes called the root of all yogas. So I figured I should be able to practice and teach any kind of yoga, which I did for a while. I had all different styles. And I learned some really important lessons about teaching and practicing with ego. And I like to joke around that the style of yoga you want to avoid is the show off and hurt yourself style of yoga. Whenever you do, don't do that. Don't do that. And now I'm really into the avoid injury style of yoga. And there's lots of ways that you can do that. And mostly to be conscious, as my teacher said, be consciously conscious of your consciousness. And time goes by, and because of some bad things I got into in the food business in the 80s, and some genetic situations with my heart. So I have a heart condition, which I've had all my life, and then eventually it all panned out to heart condition, bad drugs, and stress combined to give me a stroke, a series of strokes, actually. And the reason why I had a series of strokes was because I ignored the prescriptions of my Western doctors and followed the advice of a series of New Age quacks, I should call them, who didn't have heart conditions and didn't understand the necessity of the big picture as far as health. So if there's anything that I can pass along or share is, whatever you do, you shouldn't limit yourself to one modality, and you should look at the big picture as far as your health. And if you have health issues, you should, get plenty of exercise and good food and fresh air and water, etc. And that's what I'm doing right now. I live at a spa, and I've managed to find myself at a place where I can totally focus on healing. And there's lots of spas and resorts in the area where I live too that I can share my expertise or not. Mainly, it's just understanding that it's really important to do what you need to do, not so much what other people are telling you to do. That's wisdom or not, I don't know. And what else? What else did you want to know?
Well, I was going to say, like a lot of the time I tell a lot of my clients in healthcare, that I deal with, that, once you push your body, past a certain point, a lot of the holistic stuff isn't going to work for you. And there are a lot of quacks out there. Don't get me wrong. In medicine and healthcare and alternative healthcare. I mean, it crosses the board. But when people like Jonathan have something that's going on, and it's been going on for a period of time, where it's past the point of a lot of the holistic medicines to be able to help it, I tell people once you get past that point, you kind of have to embrace Western medicine and some of their drugs, because, the biggest thing that Western medicine has is they can monitor you. There's more monitorization. They're taking blood tests, they're checking you cognitively. There's lots of different things that that they're doing to help people who've gone past that edge. So I ended up, being in holistic healthcare and watching the whole situation, going on with Jonathan. But and there was a period I was really scared. I thought he was not going to make it. So I'm glad he did. It was kind of a journey. So do you think, as you age, it's more of a journey to health on all levels than when you're younger, because you're already healthy, so you can kind of, drive yourself like a rental car? I think for me, the older I age, the more I feel like it's towards the journey of health, like you said, focusing in on yourself, doing what you need to do, how you need to do it, educating yourself. And so what do you think? Do you think that you're more on a journey to health now than you ever have been, or are you there?
Well, I like that what Jung said is, when he said is something like, you spend half of your life building up your ego, and then you spend the second half of your life letting go of your ego. In other words, if you are driven by wanting to succeed, wanting to make money, or you're in a situation like I was, where I wanted to support a wife and family, and yes, I wanted to succeed. I taught more than 10 yoga classes a week at one point. But you're driven by so much of what society or what other people are telling you should do, and you're not thinking, well, wait a second, do I really want to do that? And of course, you don't have the ability to look back at any time when you're in it and say, this would not be a wise choice if I did this. That's 2020. Hindsight is 2020. They say you don't have that vision when you're in something, and especially when you're in a sort of survival mode where you have to do this and you have to do that, and that's where most people who are not getting Social Security, I should say, are in that situation where they have to make a living, and so that frequently becomes toxic, and that creates, as far as aging and making right decisions as you get older. Yeah, but in my case, as long as I stay alive, my only job is staying alive. I keep getting money from Social Security and my pension. So, unfortunately, we don't have that luxury, or people don't have that luxury when they're younger, of saying, "Oh, all I have to do is stay alive," and they don't look at it like that. They look at it more like, "How am I going to get ahead, or how am I going to, how am I going to survive?" And that's just the way life is in this country. Especially in a capitalist society, there are no slackers allowed. So, anyway, this isn't about politics, it's about yoga. So,
yeah, well, yoga is kind of political, isn't it? In itself.
Well, yeah, that now that it's big business, it is. Yeah, that's we agreed we weren't going to get gossipy.
Yeah, we're not going to gossip.
Anything like that. But I mean, just talking about how yoga is big business now, and lots of people want to get in on it, and their motivation may not be altruistic. They may think their motivation is altruistic. They may think that they want to help people, and it's a fun thing to do. And I don't want to sound like a disgruntled, nasty old desert dog, but I see people getting into it now, and I have to give them credit. I have to give them support. I can't be grumpy. I have to be positive. But I can also be offer some discriminating wisdom about the yoga business. And it's supposed to be for the individual. Really, that's how it all began. And then there was a huge movement going back a few thousand years, which you might call Mahayana Buddhism, a certain type of Buddhism, which said, look, what good is it going to do the rest of the people if we're just sitting in our caves, feeling good about ourselves, and as my atheist mother used to say, contemplating your navel. I wish there was a lot of truth in that. But anyway, more and more people sort of say, what can we do for everybody else here? Let's help the rest of humanity and not just be concerned with working it out for ourselves. So that is the goal. That is the idea. And the more you focus on being of service to others, that is, in my opinion, the highest form of yoga, which is called karma yoga, which is the yoga of selfless service and the yoga of serving others. And in the West, where there's this mindset of what's in it for me and what am I going to get out of this, sacrificing myself to serve others, what's in it for me? So it's kind of silly to think about it in that way, but we're hardwired to think that way. Living in a capitalist society is if I teach yoga, I can make this much money, and I can just chill and relax, and I'll be around a bunch of groovy people, and et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of the psychology of it, and that works out, and I'm really happy if that works out for a lot of people. But on the other hand, there's lots of people out there, like older people in the community that I live, for example, and not necessarily where I live, but they're out there, younger people, as in children, that really need yoga. There's this sort of I don't know how to use the word effete. That would date me, but everybody wants to feel good about each other and about themselves, and wear the right outfits and have the right equipment and be at the right festival. It's kind of a fad. It's kind of a clique. What it really should be, in my opinion, is helping people who might not have access to all that groovy stuff. They might really need ways to find out how to breathe and move their bodies, like older people or children. That's my political shtick on yoga. Don't get me started. That's what we're here for. Get me started.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. The part of you I love the most. Once you get past the doorway to Jonathan, he's quite the gem. Seriously. Okay, so I was thinking about when you were talking a little bit back was about Ram Dass, and I think probably one of the most profound, in that yoga arena statement I ever heard from someone was on the Ram Dass documentary where he talks about what's happened to him in his life because of his ego. And he basically says in the video that, that God gave him cancer and he survived that. And he said he still didn't learn his ego lesson. And then God stroked him down and has made him ultimately, have to surrender. He said he can't even wipe his own butt, which is not Jonathan's situation, but he can't do any of that stuff and drive. He said, but ultimately it finally, broke him, of his ego, and he could finally be, connected to himself emotionally. But I always remember how profound that was, just the way that he said, said it, and it goes back to what you were saying about that ego, about you spend the next half of your life trying to get your ego at bay, or get over yourself maybe. All right, so what do you think? Okay, so you've done lots of different types of yoga. So what type of yoga is your favorite?
Well, like I say, my favorite is definitely karma yoga. Karma yoga is yoga of work. I work as a worship, and I selflessly serve others. That's my favorite, because more and more the technical aspects of yoga are kind of like a nice embellishment to what I do now, which is really I don't know whether you want to call it yoga or what you want to call it, but it's walking. I walk up in the hills near where I live, and an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, and swimming and water exercises, water yoga. So that's what I'm going for now. But I have this whole history, I have this whole technology that's available to me that I can access anytime I want to. But as far as a regular daily practice, and I would say that if you ask me what's your favorite kind of yoga, I would say it's karma yoga and yoga sadhana. Yoga sadhana is a daily practice. What do you do every day for yourself? And boy, you can go on and on about all the different styles of yoga and this and that. And really, yoga is union with the infinite, or the finite with the infinite, the finite individual with the universal consciousness. So you can do that many, many different ways, and that's yoga in my opinion. It's food, it's life, it's people, it's animals, it's everything, and especially in my experience, getting stuck on one style or one group or one thing, good luck with that. I don't want to be negative. I've known people for almost 50 years who have been doing the same thing, and I honor them. I think that's great. But as for me, I've always been a floater. I've always been a bumblebee. I've always gone from one thing to the next. And now, one of my biggest challenges in life, and one thing I'm appreciating more and more, is understanding that I have a certain amount of room in my brain for fantasy, scheming, planning, thinking, logic, reason, argument, worrying, and knowing. There's a whole bunch of stuff in my head that's going on that if I can eliminate, there's actually 9 things, or I have a whole area in my brain that's freed up. And the way that works for me after an early lifetime of traveling around is thinking about how I'm going to go someplace else. So now that I live at a spa, which is kind of like a paradise for me, I could say, hey, I don't have to do that anymore. I can just stay here. And maybe someone will call me and want to talk to me, or maybe someone will come visit me, or maybe not. You know what I'm saying? Going back to what's your favorite type of yoga, which is staying in one place and not being attached to all the things that are valuable that's deemed valuable in our culture. You know, money, travel, relationships. You know, all these things that we think are important often are our downfall. And so I've learned some very important lessons in life. Life isn't, the things you want don't have to be outside of yourself. You could be like, the most important thing could be just finding contentment within yourself and not looking outside of yourself for people and things and places. But I think I went off the track of what's my favorite kind of yoga. I would say karma yoga, the yoga of action. People are trying to get me to go back to teaching again, and it reminds me of a great story of a gentleman by the name of Lao Tzu, who was the founder of, I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, founder of Taoism, very, very, very profound series of Chinese philosophy, pretty much the Chinese philosopher. He was about to leave. He was heading out. He was heading over the mountains. And, hey, wait a second. You can't leave us. Come on. What do you got? What do you got for us? You can't leave. And he turned and he said, okay, well, I'll tell you what. Here's this little scroll. And he handed the Tao Te Ching, one of the most famous treatises of philosophy, to whoever was asking. And he did that. He said, here's this. Okay. So I kind of feel like that in a way. And then I also feel like if you talk about karma yoga, any discussion about karma yoga is incomplete without talk about the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the great epic poems of Hinduism. And it was also about doing something and not doing something. And in the case of the Bhagavad Gita, the one fellow was sitting in his chariot about to go into battle to murder of his friends and family on the other side of the battlefield. And his charioteer happened to be this blue guy named Krishna, who represented the infinite, or God, if you want to call it. And they had a whole discussion. It was a poem, just like Lao Tzu. It was a poem. Oh, should I do it or should I not do it? And what happens if I do it? And on and on and on and on. So, you know, I won't say that I don't want to piss anybody off by saying the whole message of the Bhagavad Gita is just like Nike, just do it. But anyway, it's about doing for others. In that case, it might have been doing to others, but selflessly doing. To me, that's more important than whether I can get into a posture or I can get somebody else to get into a posture or whatever. So I'm standing on the battlefield, and people are trying to convince me to go back to teaching. And go ahead, make my day.
Go ahead.
Try all you want.
So I met Jonathan. Okay, so I met him through the Kundalini people who I was staying at their house that I was learning from. But the first time that I actually saw Jonathan in person, in San Diego, it's a really weird place because for the most part, the weather is constantly the same. So I was down there during a Christmas time, and so the first time I actually saw Jonathan physically, I was doing energy readings and healings at the Controversial bookstore. And he came in there, it was during Christmas, so he did like a whole week of dressing up like his idea of Saint Nick, and Jonathan had these lavish costumes. I mean, lavish. And so he came in as old Saint Nick, and that's how I first met him. Hairdo, beard, dressed like, I think more of a natural Saint Nick would look like. But yeah, so Jonathan, so that's another side of Jonathan when I first met him, was that he was doing a lot of, and he would just do it for fun. That's the part that was kind of, he would just decide, okay, well, today I'm going to dress up like a frog and I'm going to go out into the public and, and see what kind of reaction I get, and so I met him. So that's how I first met him. I met him as old Saint Nick. When I met him first in person. So hey,
let me interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Okay? If you don't mind, give my ego a little break here. But I don't. Dressing up gives people an idea of what I was doing. I understand that, but I prefer to call it manifesting the archetypes of the collective unconscious. Okay, as in old guy with long hair and a beard, and in the case that you're talking about, I was manifesting one of the three wise men. Story of the three wise men, very profound and interesting, the true story. And the wise man with the turban would have been the Persian of the Central Asian, who would have been Gaspar, actually. So if anybody out there wants to look it up, the meaning of the three wise men, then that's the point of going out and dressing up, as you say, or manifesting. And I also would call it performance art, as in guerrilla theater performance art. You never know what to expect, what might happen next. So yeah, just to clarify. My friend, the psychologist, knows that it kind of annoys me when he uses the term dressing up, since he is a Jungian psychologist. So. Anyway. Okay.
All right. Well, I will defer from using those terms for your performance, your performance art. Another thing too is Jonathan just did it. He didn't he wasn't doing it like in LA to get, like a job on TV or anything. He just did it. He just was, improv, you know what I mean? Like you just wake up and go, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and go out in society and just see what happens. Kind of a thing. So, yeah. So anyway, and it was really cool. I mean, his costumes are who he was manifesting. I mean, were really good. He did an astounding job making these and really thinking things out and thinking things through. I mean, you had all kinds of manifestations. Didn't you have, didn't you do the Egyptian dog-headed guy? The god? What was his name?
I got Anubis. Still have Anubis. He suffered an injury, ironically, in the same part of his head that I did. So art imitates life, unfortunately. But he's still underground in my basement. He's waiting to be manifested. But yeah, the Anubis, the guardian, the one who guides the soul through the death process to get to the other end of the tunnel to everlasting life, everlasting light, everlasting life. So Anubis is the guardian, the guide, the teacher, the soldier, the servant. That's the meaning of Anubis, other than being a really cool-looking Egyptian god. So that's me. I can do it. I could do Anubis. He's a little worse for wear, but he's still waiting in the basement.
All right, so tell us more about yoga. I mean, for a while there too, you got a degree, you went to college. Didn't you study like philosophy? Didn't you study like Eastern philosophy? You were really into that for a long time, about how you kind of had a belief that Jesus, through your studies, traveled through India. and then lived out his life there.
Yeah, there's a book called Jesus Lived in India, and there's plenty of Jesus conspiracy theories. And like I said, I lived in Israel for 7 years. My parents were atheists, so I was kind of the rebel in the family where I was into spiritual things as the years went by. And, well, my teacher always said that, the same thing. So it explains how there's a period where Jesus disappeared when he was 12. They couldn't figure out where he went, and so he disappeared until he was in his 30s or something. And there's a lot of theories that say he went all over the place, traveled to Greece, traveled to Egypt, and traveled to all the centers of mysticism or sacred knowledge, whatever you want to call it, at that time in the world, and then returned and did his thing. And there's a lot of ideas about how in the Bible itself, all the clues are there that explain how he, in fact, survived the crucifixion. It was kind of like he faked his death, as you could say. And, the clues are there. At one point, while he was being crucified, they gave him a sponge, which was supposedly soaked in some kind of vinegar, whether it was considered a form of torture or something. And the theory is that this was actually, they were all conspiring. Imagine, I don't know if you know your Bible, but imagine Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea and Mary Magdalene all sitting down and say, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to start this whole thing, get this whole thing rolling, fulfill this prophecy? This is what's going to happen when you get the sponge, which is soaked with opium and soma. Then that's your cue to say, oh, Father, how could you forgive them, for they don't know what they do. And then at some point, a centurion who's in on the conspiracy goes to stab him with a spear, see if he's still alive. And right there in the Bible, it says he stabs him and fluid comes out, or he bleeds. And any doctor will tell you, guess what? When you're dead, you don't bleed. You're done bleeding. And what else? Oh, and then the Bible talks about bringing in a massive amount of aloe and myrrh, which is one of the most powerful healing herbs that you can have. And the theory is, anyway, that when he got to the cave, he got wrapped up and packed with this medicinal herbs for 3 days. And, it's hard to believe that a Roman soldier could not be corrupted, paid off in some way, and told to tell a story, etc. Anyway, so yeah, Jesus conspiracy theory. Are you there? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just listening because
Okay,
you always had
I
just always thought you had an interesting theory, or what you talked about the. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, everybody can look it up if you want, and so the idea is that he survived the crucifixion, and then went on from there and traveled all over the place, including North and South America. There's another Native American tradition which has the Jesus as the Quetzalcoatl, or I can't remember. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, or the plumed serpent, the hurricane, the one who.
Yeah, Mayan.
Yeah, Mayan. Yeah. The one who controls the winds, which is one of the aspects of Jesus' powers. He controlled the wind and the water. And so, yeah. And then there's a theory that in Kashmir there's a tomb, which is reputed to be the tomb of Jesus. And in Muslim traditions, there's they considered Jesus to be a prophet who would be actually they would have referred to him as Yeshua ibn Yusuf, which is Jesus, son of Joseph. Jesus, son of Joseph. Anyway, it's interesting to me, and I'm sure at one point Hollywood's going to get a hold of it, and there's going to be a major revolution for, the same way that the Muslims rioted over, any funny business about Muhammad, and any funny business about Jesus, I'm sure is going to be a big drama. In my opinion, it's a great story. It will be a great story. At some point, somebody will tell it. Hollywood can get a hold of it, and it will be a catalyst for major change in the way we understand history and religion and personalities and everything else. Because ultimately, in my experience, all the great spiritual teachers really taught what boiled down to the same thing as Buddha and Jesus, especially. You can do this. You can be like me. All you have to do is this, this, and that. Follow these simple precepts. And I'm not here to be your God or your king or your rule over you, whatever. Or start a nice religion where everybody has to pay and I can make lots of money on it. No, I'm not here for that. I'm here to tell you how you can do it yourself. You can do it yourself. To me, that's the ultimate message of any spiritual process.
Yeah, I like Buddha's approach. I think my approach is more like Buddha sometimes, where, he studied, he left his kingdom. I didn't have a kingdom, but, and he went on a journey, and then he, came in contact with 7 supposed masters, and each master had something different. And each time he studied with one, he'd be like, wow, this is really not for me. Go to the next one. Nope, that's really not for me. And I think at one point, the 7th teacher was kind of more harsh about deprivation of food as a spiritual mechanism. And Buddha tried that. There's those that carved wooden statue that they say that it's in one of those museums, that they said that's what Buddha looked like because he was eating 1 piece of rice a day for a long period of time. And he became so emaciated that you could see his bones. He had skin over his bones and he was still alive. And then that was the moment where, when he came out of that, he realized, that wasn't the way either. And so I think kind of like I have more of a Buddha path where it's like, I'm traveling along. I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but that doesn't quite work for me. Okay, I'll take that information, go to the next one. Okay, that's cool. And then, at the end, I think the big lesson for me in my adult life is surrounded by food as medicine, and not engaging with that 7th lesson Buddha had before, he found enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, which is starvation is definitely not the way. Food deprivation is definitely not the way to staying alive or, having a healthy body for sure, or a healthy mind. Are you there? Did I lose you?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, feed the mind, feed the body, right? Feed the spirit. I always think sometimes in a lot of the, spiritual traditions, people forget about the food part. Oh, I lost him. Hold on a second. Hold on. Let me get him back. Let me call him. I don't know if he knows that he fell off. All right, Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio. Oh, hey, I didn't know if you realized you fell off.
Oh yeah, I had to plug in. I was about to run out of juice.
Sorry. All right. Well, we have about 6 more minutes in the first hour, and then we have a 4-minute break. And so, is there anything else that you want to close with after the first hour? Any thoughts on your mind, or ideas or stories or anything like that? And then we'll go to break, and then we'll come back at the top of the hour.
Well, I was going to say one of my favorite stories about Buddha is there's so many, but about the Enlightenment is Nandabala, the milkmaid, who basically just the vision, and she offered him the milk, and that was the catalyst for his enlightenment. But hopefully I'm not offending any Buddhists out there, but just the vision of a young woman in a sari offering milk to a starving man, to me that really brings up a profound truth of, the male-female polarities and the importance of the big picture and how the ego can be taken on a journey with human relationships. Human relationships really are so important to life, and just figuring out everything out on your own by yourself is a difficult path. Okay, I guess that's my little thing I wanted to get in there. Hello?
Yeah. No. So you still have 4 more minutes, so you can still get more profound about that. Because I know you have your opinions. You're just being soft on your opinions right now. Your opinions and theories. So what else? Because you're really, out of all the people that I've ever met, you're very, your approach to yoga is very relationship oriented. Unlike most people. And you did dabble with doing couples yoga and stuff like that for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a burgeoning career as a partner yoga instructor. At the same time, I was going through a divorce of my wife of 25 years, and there was a little bit of duality there, a little bit of what's the word? Hypocrisy, you might say. That's the most important thing about relationships, especially relationships in yoga, is honesty and walking the walk, and practicing what you preach. That's true with anything. So, I was not, and I paid a price, paid a heavy price. Part of the reason why I had my health difficulties was the stress of duality, of knowing in your heart, in my case, knowing in my heart that what I was doing was wrong, caused me some serious physical, medical, health, heart problems, heart issues. I had atrial fibrillation, which is like the brain of the heart. Everybody should know that your heart has a brain, upper chamber and lower chamber of your heart. And so if you think about it, you don't think about your heart as having a brain. The same way you don't think about your gut as having a brain. And in yoga, in a way, you have 7 brains, 7 centers of consciousness, if you want to look at it that way. So one way of explaining the chakras. And I definitely believe that because I've experienced it. And so, just like I said, go back to that truth. Be consciously conscious of your consciousness. Know where your brains are at every moment. I did not, and I learned a lesson. So all you can do is share and encourage people to experience so they know, but more and more people think they know something by looking it up on their smartphone. And I would encourage anybody and everybody to not know something based on experience. Experience, therefore, I know. The Aquarian motto. I know because I experience. Not because somebody else tells me so.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important part of life. Is life by experience, for sure. I probably have learned pretty much everything that I've ever learned by experience. At least the important fiction, right? And nonfiction. All right, everybody, we're going to go to break for 4 minutes. And so we're going to mute, and we'll be back at the top of the hour. Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. See you back in 4 minutes.
Do I stay on the line or do I hang up?
Oh, just hang on. Just kind of sit, be quiet, If you need to go do something, I'll see you back in 4 minutes because they can hear us talking. Okay, great.
Okay. All right,
Bye.
bye.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Hello, all you good-looking people out there in Revolution Radio. This is Mario. I invite you to join me Thursdays at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other. It's a show about you, it's a show about me, but ultimately it's a show where we try to have a little bit of fun. We discuss important topics, and we do our best to be apolitical. So I invite you, put on your favorite pair of comfy sweats, your smoking jacket, and grab a beverage of your choice, and join me Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other on Revolution Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
From the astral realms to the physical plane, the halls of power to the walls of home, the multiverse to the innerverse, all will be haunted by the ghost in the machine. I am Steve Zerloff, the ghost in the machine. Mondays, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Studio B, exclusively here on Revolution.Radio.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
When your doctor tells you you have bad cholesterol or blockages in the arteries, what do? When diet and exercise is not enough, we try medications and hope for the best. For the last 2 decades, I have been telling people about a natural method to help solve these problems and more. Extendovite can help maintain cardiovascular health and lower blood lipid levels in adults. The 7 herbs in Extendovite are known to work together synergistically to get the results we hope for. There are many testimonials on Extendovite's effect on circulatory-related ailments. Get Extendovite today to start your journey back to a healthier life. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or see us on Amazon.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
All right. Okay, so it's okay. All right. Anyway, so we're back in the second hour, Carrying Stones, a Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You can go to our website and look at all kinds of amazing ways that you can fund us. You can also go to Schedule A, find me in the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time slot where the B is. Click on the B, click on the B, and there's will be some bio information and contact information. You want to contact me, and we're in the second hour talking to a good friend of mine, Jonathan Button, about all things yoga and philosophy and whatever else that we can get in the next hour. So yeah, are you with me? Are you there?
Yes.
Oh, awesome.
Yes, I'm here.
Did you think about anything on break that you want to talk about?
I also wanted to catch up a little bit on that Jesus conspiracy theory, which is that Jesus is actually the Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, who introduced the idea of the Bodhisattva, which is essentially, I'm not going to go across until everybody else makes it. Like, I'm the guy that helps everybody off the airplane that has crashed into the ocean. He makes sure everybody gets off, and then he sinks with the airplane because that's his deal. He knows that he'll be reincarnated, and he or she is dedicated to helping everybody go across, and that's the vow of the Bodhisattva. And in Buddhist scriptures, they talk about the venerable Bodhisattva, and they almost have a specific date, which is a big Buddhist conference that the Buddhist king Ashoka, called in the 3rd century in what is now Kashmir. And that's my theory, is that Bodhisattva was in fact the elderly Jesus. Jesus age 80. His 80s. And I think it's great. It's a great way to bring it together, some of the world religions as having the same founder. And instead of remaking all these dumb superhero movies, I think Hollywood should make a spiritual movie at some point. So I'm standing by. I got the screenplay.
You've got the screenplay.
That's all I have to say about that.
Okay, well, tell us about Kundalini Yoga, and why is it? Because, we're dealing with a lot of people, probably, some people have spiritual beliefs that are listening out there. Mostly Revolution Radio is kind of like a network radio where we can talk about whatever we want. I try to really bring different people on with different perspectives about, our reality and their experience with their reality. And so you want to talk to us a little bit about Kundalini Yoga so people kind of might have an idea about what that is?
Sure. Kundalini means coil of the beloved. The coiled up energy rests at the base of your spine, like everything that makes you feel good, your immune system, et cetera, and everything that happens in your body is related to your spine. And this is the basic principle of chiropractic: is that the nerves, blood vessels are all connected to the spine. So the health of the spine is the health of the body. So Kundalini Yoga focuses on making sure that energy, spinal fluid, nervous system is moving through your spine. That's one way of describing it. Also, I've had to answer a question recently in a job interview at a spa, where I was asked, well, isn't Kundalini mean snake? And I'm thinking, it's that scary idea that it's a sexual thing and it means snake, and you're going to do that yoga and it's all about sex in some funny way. And so you have to answer that question as in, well, what does snake mean? What does it mean to people's memories, to their unconscious, whatever you want to call it, the image of a snake. And throughout history, what does a snake mean? In all different cultures and civilizations, snake means the energy of transformation, the energy of knowledge. The snake in the Garden of Eden led, tricked, whatever belief system you have, the snake was there. And the snake simply means knowledge through experience. When you get bitten by a snake and you survive, it gets your attention, for example. And so in the Native American tradition, snake medicine is that knowledge through an experience, that medicine that comes from poison. Poison, if you don't get sick or you don't die, you have an immunity, develop an immunity. So to answer that question, why do people think it means the snake? And one of the reasons is that the snake is depicted in a diagram of the chakras. And so it's also something that inspires fear. And it's from the earth. The snake crawls on the earth. So first chakra represents the earth. It corresponds to the anus in the human being. And so when you're afraid, you're going to clench down there. And fear is what keeps you alive. Fear is what we call in yoga the negative mind. The negative mind says, there is a rhinoceros charging at me. I must do something. I must run up a tree. I must run. I must fight or flight. It's what keeps you alive. Fear is what keeps you alive. So I don't want to make anybody mad, but if you really want to understand it, you could call it, instead of calling it Kundalini yoga, you could call it asshole yoga. But that wouldn't go over very well. Right. Nobody's laughing. So
no,
anyway,
I think it's funny because it is, right? Asshole yoga.
And that's the lesson that I learned. That's the lesson that I learned. And going back to the ego is, if you do things in life, then karma is going to catch up to you. Whether you do good things, whether you do bad things, it's all going to balance out in some way. And if you believe in reincarnation, then the more things that happen to you that don't seem very nice, then the better, because then you're getting rid of all those nasty things that are happening to you. They're happening to you, and you're over it. You're working through it. You're going beyond it, so you can go on to the next thing, like that idea of snake medicine, like Kundalini. And more in my own yoga practice, I kind of let it slide for a long time. This idea of pulling a root lock, of pulling in your stomach, pulling in sex organs, pulling in the anus. It's a lock. It's something that's really important for your physical well-being, to be able to flex those areas just for functioning in all the ways that you can imagine. Consciously exercising those areas is important. Whether you're sitting around, whether you're walking, whether you're doing whatever it is, it took me years and years and years to realize that how important that was through experience, not through somebody telling me about it. So that is one of the main aspects of Kundalini yoga is that awareness of those, what they call the lower chakras, or the lower triangle, or the plexus, all that you do. And this other thing that I like about Kundalini yoga is it represents many different modalities that have come together. And you can say that about yoga in general, actually. There's many different styles of yoga or schools of yoga that have come together, that are coming together, that are being expressed. And I would include shamanism, systems of shamanism. I would include that as the sum total of human experience. And so claiming the sum total of human experience in one belief system or one system of yoga, I think is silly, personally, and that there's sure to be some outcome for that sort of a ego trip, I should say. But anyway, getting back to the technical question, which I had in a job interview, so I kind of rehearsed it a little bit. Oh, I should have said this, I should have said that. And Yeah, that's the understanding of Kundalini is the kundal, the coil of the beloved, the sweetie. And so when you get that sweetness from doing those exercises or being in those situations and stimulating the vagus nerve, for example, I've been doing a lot more and more about trying to disseminate that knowledge of the vagus nerve, how it's all connected, this nerve that wanders around throughout your body and is connected to the vocal cord, which is actually a bonular structure. So that's why I appreciate, Bridgette, the opportunity to talk, because I'm helping others and I'm helping myself by communication. That's the true meaning of communication, is that, and Kundalini Yoga is that everything is working. Everything is being circulated. All this energy, this psychic energy, healing energy. It's kind of like more and more people are trying to figure out that sexual energy is more than just a toy or a fun thing to indulge in, or a great way to satisfy your ego, or who knows what, or make money, or whatever dysfunctional way we use sexual energy. But sexual energy is at its best when it is for healing and creativity. And that takes us up to the
second chakra.
Second chakra, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, where it's reproduction, in the sense of, if you can truly, and not just paying lip service to it, if you could truly use that energy for creativity and healing, then you're on your way. And I don't need to get into the ways where sexual energy is being exploited and used in a very toxic way in our culture. And so it's important to transcend, either through experience, preferably through experience, to transcend that toxicity, that sexual toxicity, and move it along to more helpful and healing and creative aspects. And that's what Kundalini Yoga does. It gives you a technology, and for that and many other things that you can do to heal yourself and others.
Okay, so for our listeners, explain what a root lock exactly is.
Well, a lock it's like if you have a hose, a water hose, and you have a way of turning it off and turning it on. It interrupts the flow. So when you turn off by clenching, like physically, you would clench your anal sphincter, you would clench sex organs, and you would pull your stomach in. And so that's considered the root lock, which is called Mulband or Mulabanda. Mul is root, Banda is lock. And that interrupts the flow. Like, I don't know, what would be an example? Holding your breath and then taking a breath. And that's another concept of yoga, is that it's a tourniquet effect, they call it, where you're interrupting the flow and then you're letting it go again. So it's stronger, and it's more. It helps to strengthen those areas. I guess that's the main thing. You're exercising those areas, so you're strengthening those areas. So your body works better. I guess it's a simple explanation.
Awesome. Yeah. No. So, yeah. So, let's say medically or medicinally, what would you use the root lock for? Or tell people why they should do the root lock for? What would be the main diagnosis and prescription of the root lock? Like if you were talking, because yoga is medicine. Yoga is clarified by definition as medicine, right? A path of medicine, basically, right? So what would you, I know why I would use the root lock, or I know about the root lock, but I was just seeing for listeners, why would they want to look into a root lock or learn how to do a root lock? What would benefit them? What kind of benefits could they get?
Well, for women, I think it's for both women. It's called a Kegel exercise, right? So better circulation down there, any issues down there, both physical and whatever else. You're instead of not thinking about it and not saying, "Oh, I don't want to think about that dirty stuff." No, it's part of you, and so you're going to poop better. One thing, you're going to have better sex, you could say, and you're going to be more connected to the earth on a larger level. You're activating your connection to the earth, and in addition to walking on barefoot on grass and stuff like that. But yeah, root lock would be the way to. It's almost, for me, I eat really well so that I can poop really well. Because if I'm pooping a lot, then I'm releasing more toxins in my body. My body's really healthy. So I would say that would be a benefit, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no, I think it's a serious benefit. I think emotionally too. Back when I was kind of, living on that island down there in San Diego, and doing those morning practices, one thing I learned early on, way more so than any other yoga that I had done, was the postures and all the different kinds of stuff, and the pumps, that you use with some of the movement for back pumps to, get things flowing and moving. Root locks, all the different other kinds of practice was emotionally. That's where Kundalini Yoga really targeted me. Was, when I was doing the practices, there was a lot of really deep emotional stuff that, I had to kind of clear along the way. I think more so than probably any practices that I've done of any type of spirituality, even in shamanism, it was a really big kind of emotional period for me. I don't know, maybe it opened some stuff up, was bringing stuff to the surface, but, sometimes, just have a breakdown right in the middle of a practice. So for me, Kundalini Yoga was really instrumental in breaking, breaking that thing of who people think I am, who people wanted me to be, or the expectations, or the pre-programming. And it broke a lot of that stuff free. Because, it's the other thing too about Kundalini Yoga, it's kind of practiced kind of during a vulnerability stage. So you wake up, right when your body's in REM, and you get up. Traditionally, they would, take the cold shower, then put their clothes on, and then everybody come to practice. And so practice is 4:30 in the morning. And then, it goes on for a period of time. So you're kind of in your most vulnerable, state as far as, waking up, and you haven't really suited up with your, fake Superman outfit to fly out into the day. So do you have you experience that in teaching sometimes Kundalini practice? I mean, what do you find the most that you think it targets, or do you think it's different individually? What it clears, awakens, brings up? Are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
For me, I think for a lot of people, there's so much that goes on below the surface. There's so much that happens unconsciously that you can't really say, oh, it's doing this and oh, it's doing that. And it's definitely true that, like anything else that's different, when you start doing it, you really feel it more than anything else, any other time. I mean, I was 18 years old, and I was in the Kundalini Yoga ashram when I started doing it. So, of course, I was on a cloud of feeling amazing, Generally, hopefully, when you're 18 years old, you feel amazing. And so, I don't want to say that over the years I became jaded, but I definitely have the sense of that knowledge to experience coming and improving. I'd have friends that made fun of me and saying, well, you're supposed to be a Kundalini yoga teacher. How come it's not working for you? And, you experience things, and you especially experience things when you teach. You really learn something when you teach it, for sure. And I was just going to say, I don't have a practice so much anymore where I wake up super early, maybe 5 or 6 instead of 3 or 4. But I have the memory of that, muscle memory or cellular memory or something. And I accessed that the other day. A friend of mine convinced me to take him to the airport in Los Angeles and leave at 2 in the morning. And driving to the airport in Los Angeles from Palm Springs is not a spiritual exercise. That's my knowledge that I gained from the experience. But I felt like for several days, I felt totally whacked out that I had done something wrong. You know that feeling when you've done something wrong and you can't get over it? And, man, long story short, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, you're like...
Yeah, you are very sensitive and very vulnerable at that time. And the last, what they call, the yogis call the last watch of the night. And it is that time that's really the best time for our spiritual practice, because all the other humans, or most humans, are sleeping. And most animals too. And so it's just you and God, or you and Goddess, or you and whatever you've got going. And once again, learning through experience. In my case, experiences that aren't so healthy. And if you look up Tantra on the internet and look up left-handed Tantra, it's basically they won't tell you anything other than, it's all the things you're not supposed to do. And even to get to that point where you're actually doing that, it takes years and years and years of being dedicated to the master or whatever. But I think it's ironic that it's called the left-handed way, and that is my issue. Was I'm recovering from a stroke where the left side of my body was compromised. Just be careful what you talk about, what you ask for, because it could actually happen in some way that you hadn't expected. But getting back to your original question, which was Kundalini, how would it affect?
Yeah, I would just for like me, for example, it just really targeted a lot of those emotional areas, I think. And I think because, you are working with your foundation, which is your seat or your bum area, and working to open it up and then connect it, right, to the earth, basically. And then that way you spiral and pivot, basically, from that point, right? Once you have that bottom strength, and you're anchored, I guess.
Yeah, and actually, to tell you the truth, my practice is now more hatha oriented, because what I'm working on is the balance of my legs. How my legs that are connected to the earth connect to my hips and connect to the rest of my body. So balancing exercises are really all about the steady exercises of its pretty much classic hatha series of exercises, just balancing exercises. And it just gets back to basics. And Kundalini yoga is often described as a sort of a shortcut. If you wanted to have your Kundalini rise, as whatever the scriptures, rise up the ladder and achieve enlightenment while still alive, etc., that Kundalini yoga is a much shorter way to do it than classic hatha yoga. That's what they say. However, in my case, I'm sure in many cases, you have to start out with the basics. You have to have a basic platform to go from. At least some kind of a warm-up. I mean, ideally, I would do a hatha yoga warm-up before I do Kundalini yoga, because that's what hatha yoga is at least the beginning part of a hatha yoga series should be, in my opinion, is balancing. One leg or the other leg, and that's what I do. That's what I need to do for myself, and I recommend it for everybody.
It's one of the best ways to balance out both hemispheres of the brain.
And your comment on that is saying that too. The balancing, the walk, the right, the left, and that's what classic Hatha does. First you do the right, or first you do the left, then you do the other side. Then you're balancing all this, one side, then the other side. And I've come to understand through my experience that it's like the one side that can do it better is telling the other side, teaching the other side. Your brain is part of the process, saying, okay, this is how I want that side to do it. First we're going to do it on the right side to show how to do it, then we'll do it on the left side to see what you learned. And it just sounds silly that you're teaching your body how to balance, but everybody, whether they're a stroke survivor or not, needs to constantly be teaching their body how to balance, because it's teaching your brain how to teach your body how to act. So
yeah, connects it all up together. I always look at the brain as like the hard drive, and then the brain will send out signals through the body through the nerve passages. And so if those those nerve passages are connected or disconnected in any way, say you're taking opiates, which they're disconnected at the brain, the signal doesn't even leave the brain to go down the nerve passages, which is like, the telephone center or the DSL cable, if you want to look at it that way, like your computer. And then it sends out the message down into your body through the spine. We talked about that earlier, about how important the spine is. In order for the rest of the body to receive those messages. So at any point in time when those messages have been disconnected, or we've had some kind of injury, or we've never really stood on our own 2 feet before, kind of an idea, then you have to retrain your body, and you have to retrain it. So because like he was saying, kind of in a thought, is that each side of your brain does something different. One is more technical and the other one is more feeling. And so you learn it on the technical side and then you teach it to the feeling side. See if it got it over there, so that you have symmetry, and your body develops symmetrical all the way up. So you don't have a speed wobble going as you're walking along. So, and that's the best way to have long-term health or longevity, is to have your brain, your hard drive, really connected well to both sides of your body. And you have to keep at it, and you have to keep developing it. And I think sometimes as you age, it's better to do more things like yoga, or types of things where you have more balancing from the foot up, so that you can get the signal from the brain all the way down into the foot. Otherwise, if you don't use it, you'll lose it, kind of a thing. So any thoughts on that? And then, tell us what Hatha yoga is, in case our listeners don't know.
Hatha, the word Hatha means sun, moon. So you're balancing the light and the dark, the two sides in your body, within yourself. It's balance. It means balance. That's what it means. Hatha yoga teachers will be gasping right now, because there's so much more that can be said, but that's the basic meaning. That's the meaning of the word itself. And,
it's good at
I was just going to say,
go ahead.
Talk a little bit about our experience when I had my stroke and you came to visit me in New Mexico, and you started working on me, and we began to understand that more had happened to my left side than just not being able to feel the tips of my fingers. At the time, that's all I thought was going on, because I had started walking very soon after in the rehab hospital, because if there's anything you do in life, then it's walk, because walk is what makes you human. When we all evolutionarily came out of the trees and started walking, that's what made us use our hands and think and look around and see things. So when you're walking, you're recapturing that basic physical activity which makes your brain work, is walking. But anyway, when you started to work with me on getting my left side back, you were able, unlike the Western doctors, you were able to go inside and realize there was more than just the tips of my fingers involved on my left side. And so I think it's a great story, which explains so much about alternative medicine, because the first thing they had me doing when I got out of the hospital was physical therapy, lifting weights, which caused inflammation in my rotator cuff and various issues of inflammation and bad things happening to my left side because it wasn't functioning to begin with, all there. So I'm not sure I got onto that, but I thought it was an interesting story in regards to what we were talking about, the balance and the evolutionary origin of the walking thing and how walking affects your brain and how exercise affects your brain.
Yeah, and the one thing is, I mean, maybe it's lessons learned, when we're younger, but one thing, like specifically in my approach to working on people, is, getting away from the force. Like I think once the body is kind of suffering a little bit, using any kind of force against it, I think backfires. And I think you have to come back into balance, being able to balance both sides and gaining, ability to use both sides equally because you're using both sides of your brain equally for sure. For sure. But you're doing really good because you were teaching. I only made it to a couple of your yoga classes at the Yogi Bijan Center down there. I forget what they call it down there in New Mexico. But it was pretty early, but you were pretty good. I mean, for having, some pretty serious strokes, and, you had very limited usage of your arm when I first got there, but you were doing the dishes, even though you couldn't feel the dishes by the time I left, which was pretty significant. And, but yeah, you were pretty tough. You were, even during the classes after those strokes, you were tough. You taught a tough yoga class. For sure. But how many yoga classes were you teaching? You were just determined.
Oh, well, I was just doing an alternative, so it ended up being once every 2 weeks. So that's a great job. You teach, you work 2 hours once every 2 weeks. But that's the point. It wasn't a job. It was more like a family practice. It was the practice, the free practice that everybody does, that everybody's supposed to do, I should say, in the morning in the ashram. And, in 1975, there were 30 people that lived in the ashram, and 30 people went to sadhana. And then in 2014, there's 400 people, and sometimes there's only 4 people. But we promised we weren't going to gossip or be negative. I'm just saying that it's not for everybody getting up at 3 in the morning and doing 2.5, 3 hours of yoga and meditation. Yeah, or 4 hours. It's not easy. It's definitely not an easy road. I'm not sure I could have done that kind of stuff long term. But I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that I did experience a lot of the stuff that I experienced, dealing with that kind of a lifestyle. But, balance and everything. For me, it's better for me to kind of let my body get up when it wants to. The whole, forced waking and cold shower and all that other stuff. And early practice was just, I think, way too tough on my body, for sure. And that's just me personally. But, you'd be proud of me. I found this really amazing girl who, well, she's my age, but she is teaching this really amazing kind of like hatha yoga restoration. So it's like, hatha yoga inspired postures, but way over on the restoration side. It's probably one of the most restorative yogas I've ever done.
And so, she takes the hatha yoga postures and turns them more into like a stretching, more, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's been really good for me. And there's only like 2 of us in the class. Obviously, she doesn't teach for money. She's got another job, but she comes just to teach us on Sunday. So Sunday at 4:00. And it's a super great class. I mean, I leave feeling really good. Like I feel like I've dumped my whole week, cleared it, cleaned it, balanced myself out, got myself centered, and then, go home and go to bed, and then I'm ready for Monday morning. So, but yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the restoration side of it, because I think for me, it's more helpful to have more of the restorative stuff, and it's really hard. It's really hard to find, classes and anything physical that's more on the restorative side. I think Americans typically aren't into restoration. they're more into
that was my experience. I don't want to diss another yoga style, but that was my experience because everybody wanted the aggressive style. When I was teaching at gyms and studios, they wanted that style. And so in order to survive as a yoga teacher, to make money, I had to conform. And that, to be honest, is what I had my issues, my shoulder inflammation issues. You were there when you were working on me when I was having that shoulder inflammation issues, and some of the issues from doing all the postures with the students, which is also kind of a no-no, which is what I was doing, 10 times a week. So I had some serious issues from that. And now what I do is the balancing exercises, I have support, because instead of complaining about how I didn't have any place to do yoga, I figured out how I could do it in my RV and support. I could balance by holding on to stuff. And I also figured out I could do a great restorative yoga in bed. So I call it cloud yoga, where I figured out I could do a lot of these so-called floor exercises in bed on a soft surface. Some not, or some in a different way. So look for it. Look for it on your next big, it's going to be the next big thing. I'm going to be world famous. Cloud yoga. How to do yoga in bed.
Yeah, no. You know how many people, probably just saying, like on social media, a lot of people who maybe, in situations where they spend a lot of time in bed, or they're going through health crisis or surgery, that would be a really great thing. People could watch you on the computer in the morning, do your little practice, and they could do their little practice in their bed too. It could be famous. It's probably needed, probably above anything else. That would be a very needed thing, whether you're recovering from having a baby or a surgery or a stroke, or you had an injury, or, you may be paraplegic, who knows, maybe broke your leg. Could be a really good thing, actually.
Yeah, and also how you don't have to go to a special studio or a special place and have a special outfit and a special, all this blocks and straps and all this stuff. You could do all kinds of yoga exercises around the house, with everyday objects like chairs, beds, countertops, whatever it is you're leaning up against or doing. I think it would be a great way, and almost a funny thing, almost going back to my performance art things as in look, it's the household, it's the house husband yogi, or whatever you want to call it. He can do yoga. He doesn't have to go to a special place. He can do it all over the place.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yep. No, yoga's, yeah, you can adapt it just for anything, and any place, kind of a thing. Yeah. Okay, well, all right, so we're coming into the last, 15 minutes of the show. Is there anything else that you want to share?
Well, let's go back to the idea that yoga is everything, really. It doesn't have to be a specific school or a specific practice. It's just however you find the connection with nature, with yourself, and the relationship between yourself and nature, like taking off your shoes and walking on some grass with bare feet. That's yoga. That's a great grounding exercise. You get thousands and thousands of tiny creatures feeding you energy, blades of grass, or whatever it might be. It's important. And also getting in water. I really think that however you can do it, not everybody has visited a spa, but it really is a great way to change your electromagnetic field, to if you're depressed, if you're stuck, if you're doing something, just to get in some water. That's huge right there. That's just gigantic. Attitude adjustment. And food. I would recommend really learning about food and understanding. Basically, when you're shopping and you're at the store, and you see the aisle that says cookies and crackers, don't even go there. Don't go there. Don't even think, oh, I deserve a treat because of this emotional situation or whatever reason, whatever excuse it might be. Just don't even go down that aisle of processed food. I think that's just so important for health. That's just part of the whole matrix of disease and death. Of food, toxic food, ends you up in the toxic hospital every time. What does that have to do with yoga? It's just like I say, yoga is everything. Yoga is just like a way of life. It's a way of union. It means union. Union with the infinite, union with nature, and understanding yourself. So apply that in every way. You know?
Yeah. No, so this was kind of interesting. I read this article from this old school yogi, and he said he was talking about diet. And his whole thing was just to eat stuff that was fresh and had a lot of water in it, so that you wouldn't have inflammation and you wouldn't be dehydrated, which is eat a lot of fruit and vegetables and things like that. Was like a really positive diet. But his whole focus was on, food that had a lot of moisture in it, like fruit and vegetables and things like that. So communing with the life forces in food, really, to help your life forces maybe. But anyway, go ahead. It just simplifies. It simplifies it for me like that. Eat food that has a lot of water and is fresh.
Yeah, I mean, I try to make over half of my diet raw food, fruits and vegetables. That's my goal. That's what I try to do. It's kind of a Buddhist thing. It's just difficult for a lot of people to have most of your food activities completed by lunchtime. That's a sort of a Buddhist scripture. But in my case, a lot of people have issues with blood sugar. Not a good idea to fast or to limit, yourself to 2 meals a day. It's standard 3 meals a day. I don't recommend fasting personally. Especially if you're older and you have health issues, you really need food. And there's a lot of good reasons to be fasting, but there's a lot of outcomes that could get you in trouble, in my opinion. And then that argument could go on for 2 hours about fasting and not fasting. Doesn't really work for me. Mono diet works really well for me. I eat the same thing for a certain amount of time. You should mix it up, but if you do that, if that's your version of fasting, like in my case, in the Kundalini Yoga tradition, it's mung beans and rice, which is the cure for everything, which is sort of like a curried stew of beans and rice, you call it. And there's all kinds of stories about how it cures everything. It's the cure-all. So that's kind of what I do. And as you know, as we've experienced, you're a big proponent of the importance of good organic animal protein for your brain. And I'm all kind of about that too, but these days, not to gossip or be negative, but vegans, man, they're really quite active, quite politically active. My daughter's neighborhood in San Diego, one of the spectacles is on Easter time. There's a line of people waiting to get their honey baked hams, the honey baked ham line. And now on the other side of the street, they've got the vegans protesting with the signs and everything. It's kind of hilarious. It's kind of like performance art, you know? The battle of the vegans against the meat eaters.
Yeah.
What does that to do with yoga?
You know, the one thing that vegan and, organic meat or whatever movement, the one thing that isn't in there is dairy. And I think, for me personally, the healthier I get, the more that I either am a vegan or I'll eat a nice grass-fed piece of meat. I don't have to eat meat every day, but the one thing is that the dairy is no longer in my life. And I think a lot of people are addicted to dairy. I was addicted to it. I leaned on it quite a bit, as probably the bulk of my food, or what was in my diet, whether it was cheese or sour cream or yogurt or milk and coffee or whatever else. I think for diet wise, as long as you can, I think dairy is just a whole life force clogger. I know it's it clogs the lymph nodes, but I think, healthy lifestyle is definitely getting away from dairy. I think dairy is really toxic for sure. I mean, whey, when you cook down whey is the most toxic part of the whole dairy product. And yet, it's the superfood that's sold on the market, that everybody wants to take as a protein powder. And it's, the most toxic part of dairy once it's cooked down. Once the water and the curd is separated, the water becomes the whey. That sounds like some kind of religious thing. And water becomes the whey. WHEY. Anyway, anything else to add? So we've just got a few more minutes left in the show. 56 till.
Not really. Knowledge through experience. That's my gospel. That's what I'm preaching. Live and learn.
Are you open to having people contact you on your Facebook?
Okay.
Make a friend? Okay. So do we want to spell your name? Is it under Jonathan Button on your Facebook?
Yep.
And then tell them how you spell that, first name and last name.
Jonathan. And button, like a button.
Okay, so, if you have any questions and you want to make friends with Jonathan and encourage him to start making those internet cloud yoga classes daily, get on him. You can contact him on Facebook and then, see what he's doing or what he's up to and make friends with him. And you could even ask him a couple questions. He's a really knowledgeable person, knows a lot about philosophy and yoga and pretty amazing guy. So what are you planning on doing with the future? I mean, what's your summer going to be like?
I live here in the desert, but there's a mountain every day that I look at every day, that I can go up this mountain and be in a whole different temperate zone called Mount San Jacinto, and which means the flower which floats on the mountain. I'm sorry, the flower which floats on the water, the hyacinth. So I can go up there and be in a forest, the half an hour drive or a 10-minute tram ride. So to beat the heat, I'm probably going to go up in the mountains, hiking in the mountains, and the rest of the time I'm in the water or I'm in the air conditioning. That's it.
That's it. Oh, yeah. Hey, so I was thinking about kind of like where when you were getting healthy with your stroke and everything else, kind of where you kind of came back to the water, kind of as a healer, and kind of, navigated yourself in the position that you're in. And it was down when Jonathan was in New Mexico, doing all the Yogi Bhajan stuff in the temple. And he, was having issues with his left arm from strokes. Anyway, he asked me to drive him. I think we had to go there twice, because the first time we got lost on our way there or something like that, or we got there late because we were lost and it took us a while, so we couldn't get in the water. So we had to come back like a few days later. But Jonathan wanted to go up to this place where back when he was 18 years old that they used to go from the Sikh temple on this river. And it was an incredible place. Like, the crystals and the rocks and everything were just mind-blowing in this trail that you could tell that there wasn't really a whole lot of people that went there. But it was interesting getting him there and us taking that little trail and then sitting there and then, watching Jonathan's face, like memories and stuff like that had happened to him in that water and those experiences. And I remember thinking, like when you're in that water that you were going to be okay. But I wasn't really sure until that point. So it was like watching this transformational thing happen with Jonathan in those clean, pure, sacred waters, that have been flowing for a long time. And then watching him, slowly getting to, the hot springs where he's at now, and really working with the water, as a guide and a teacher and a healer. And water is definitely a game changer when it comes to health.
All right. Thank you. Well, I'm not going to tell anybody where my secret swimming hole in New Mexico is.
No, don't tell them. That's why I didn't bring it up. Because it's a magical place. It's a special magical place. But it was an incredible place, like the energy and just the crystals and everything. It was just a great experience to go there, for sure. All right. Well, anything else to add? We're coming into the last 3 minutes to our listeners out there.
Not much. Yoga is everything. You don't have to do yoga in a studio or with a cult. You could do it anywhere you want. That's why I got into it. It doesn't require a whole bunch of baggage. It just requires a human being most of the time. Although animals, apparently, if you look at the internet, animals can do yoga too, especially dogs. It doesn't take much to do it, to get into it these days. Good for you.
Yeah, it is good for you, and you can do it whenever, and you don't have to get on a schedule, and you can just try it and then go from there. And all you need is a body. You need to be able to breathe and balance. Find balance in your life. That's the number one thing in shamanism too that all my teachers always are conveying. It's all about the balance. It's not being on one side of the seesaw going up and down all the time. It's about being in that sweet spot right in the middle where it's completely balanced, and observing and watching and participating from that spot. And yoga, physical yoga, helps you to bring your body into balance for sure. And struggling with it early on is like our lives that we struggle with as well. And then trying to find a balance there. So sometimes it helps your nagging mind to do physical yoga, because you get to deal with your nagging body. No, just kidding. All right, Jonathan, thanks so much for being on my show. I know I had to kind of encourage him yesterday to come on my show. Everybody's always got strangeness about being on radio, but it's super easy, super great. Maybe we can have you come back on and talk about some other topics in the future. What do you think of that?
Sounds good. We can get into some juicy gossip. That's what we love to do, right? Maybe not on the radio, though. Maybe privately.
Yeah, we'll stay out. We'll leave the juicy gossip for the private phone calls. Then we'll talk about some enlightening stuff on the radio. All right, everybody.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been Carrying Stones and Digging Holes, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Thank you, Jonathan, for being on. Everybody, we'll see you next week. Mona will be on. Bye.
Bye.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Welcome to Revolution Radio, where you, the listeners, are in charge. Here at Revolution Radio, we present 48 broadcast hours of news and information each and every day. Revolution Radio never sleeps. Revolution Radio is worldwide and borderless information. Revolution Radio is also commercial-free. Revolution Radio is supported 100% by you, the listeners. And that's why we appeal to you to donate and support this station and its expenses. You can support us in many available options like archive subscriptions, our seed pack selections, or even my woodworking store. And we also even have Revolution Radio's swag at the Revolution Radio Zazzle store, in which you can get t-shirts, coffee cups, even a baby onesie. Or you can just plain donate to the cause. We cannot continue without your support, and your support is what helps pay the bills. So please, if you wish us to continue, please stop by our station support page and drop a dime on us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank or all the